Welcome to Tweener Madness, the high-stakes startup showdown where 4 of the Triangle's most promising companies are battling it out for a $25,000 investment prize from the Triangle Tweener Fund. Each episode, our finalists will face tough questions from the selection committee, defending their business and making their case for why they deserve to move on to the championship round. With only 2 spots in the final, the pressure is on. This is the Fabulous 4, where only the sharpest startups will survive. Here's your host, general partner of the Triangle Tweener Fund, Scot Wingo.
Okay, welcome to the Tweener Madness Fabulous 4. We are down to 4 awesome startups. With us for this round, we have InviteJet, featuring Paul and Brian, also known as the Dynamic Duo. You guys decide who's Batman and Robin. We'll talk about that off camera. And then our selection committee, we have Anthony Rattoli, Mitch Muma, and Zakia Lee Hill. Zakia has lots of last names we could pick from, and we're going with that combination today. Shout out to her husband. So, yes. If you'd like to learn more about our selection committee, we're not going to go into that here. You can go on to Tweener Talks or our YouTube channel where we've done Meet the Selection Committee videos, so you can hear about their awesome backgrounds. All right, are you ready? All right, you have 10 minutes to pitch.
Okay, if you're looking for the pitch, check out their episode from the round of 8. But here we're diving straight into the action. It's time for the selection committee's tough questions, and they don't hold back.
In general, it looks really good at the surface. There's a lot of different marketing platforms out there. Like, what do you see as the biggest risk for really getting this off the ground, out of the initial kind of customers that you have, knowing kind of where your market is going?
I would say it's education more than anything right now, because it is such a blue sky space. Not many people are thinking of attacking the calendar as a medium. They're still stuck on the inbox feed, right? The ugly feed style system. Calendars are more persistent. But for us, it's a lot of times like Paul does most of the sales calls, and so he can really speak to that. But mostly it's about education and like, how could I actually use this to benefit my brand and things like that. You got anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of top of mind ways to use a calendar invite right off the bat, product launches, big sales. But we've been surprised with a lot of the initial customers in trying different things. Like one of the main ones would be unengaged audiences. So with email, a lot of times that people can train their emails to go into the promotions tab. With calendar invites, those aren't considered promotional. And so, a few of our clients have just been able to send out calendar invites to unengaged audiences to take advantage of the revenue that they can get from that. But a secondary benefit is re-engaging people back into the flows for the other aspects of their marketing stack.
And do you have any feedback from the Jennies of the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
And
absolutely.
What is that feedback?
So we've gotten some really good feedback, especially like with this beta. There's so many points I could bring up, but so for one thing, with this beta test, our invites outperformed email in the trailing 2 weeks, which was really interesting. Like our revenue was more than double in the trailing 2 weeks after the event, after the actual promotion. And what that ended up telling us basically was that calendars are more persistent. So most people look at their calendars in a week view rather than, just that one day or anything. So if there's a Monday President's Day sale, it may be Friday, but because I look at a week view, I still see the emoji-filled calendar invite on my calendar, and I'm going to click into that. And so that was some feedback that we got. All in all, it's been pretty positive. The other thing that we were thinking about was we don't want to hide our unsubscribe, because we were worried about that, right? This is a new medium. We don't want to get this marked as spam or anything like that. So we're going to make the unsubscribe really like present, right? In the invite, in the emails, in everything. And what's been really interesting, and the reason that we did that is because we wanted them to funnel through the unsubscribe process rather than the spam process. And what we've seen is that we're actually on par or lower than email marketing unsubscribe and spam rates, which is really interesting and telling too, right? So, we've gotten some good feedback in that regard. And then the example I always like to bring up is that my wife is a huge fan. And I'm a huge fan. I will say that because my wife is she's a Bed Bath & Body Works aficionado, and she buys candles, and she misses their annual sale every single year, and it always costs me $200 because she's like, oh, I missed the sale. I'm gonna go ahead and buy candles anyway, right? And whereas with this, she's gonna see the actual event. It's gonna pop up on her interface rather than an email that's lost forever.
So, Brian, first, let me just speak for your wife. She probably doesn't go to Bed Bath & Body Works. Because that doesn't exist. It's probably Bed Bath & Beyond or Bath & Body. Yep.
Or Bed Bath & Beyond.
Just wanted to speak for her. Wanted to speak for her.
I think Beyond doesn't exist anymore. It's Beyond.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So just wanted to give a shout out to your wife there. So I'm going to ask you my favorite question to ask companies. I need to understand what your sustainable competitive advantage is in this space. Obviously, I see that, eventually you'll have data and all of these things to share, but just express to me or explain to me what you believe in the long run, your competitive advantage is in a sustainable way as new entrants come into this space because they see how successful you are.
It all starts with a killer feature, right? Mm-hmm. Most companies, most successful companies start with a killer feature. And we know that we have that with calendar invites, right? And so for us, the long-term thinking is how do we make a platform out of this, right? And that's why we're going down the path of integrating with their marketing stack, automating, workflows, playbooks, things like that. And then we're going to make a data play, right? Mm-hmm. We're in the process right now of opening up this third-party API. The data is what's going to be a really platform sort of approach. It's going to open up different revenue streams for us, honestly. So that's kind of the way I think about it and how we're going to be long-term sustainable. There's going to be a lot of switching costs associated with this. We've got partners that are affiliates and agencies that are working with us. So we're becoming the entrenched tool that everybody's going to be using for calendar invites, right? The switching costs are high for something like this. And so that's why we believe downstream, the data is where it's at.
Do you believe that being first to market is integral in this space?
Yeah.
Or being one of the first to market?
We, as far as we know, we are the only company that's monetizing the calendar. I think that a strong play for us is going down that e-commerce route because, we showed on a slide earlier, but they're spending $7 billion a year on email tools. Retention tools really is what it comes down to. And so brands are looking for ways to engage and convert their customers in new ways. It's always going to be supplemental and part of their calendar set. It's not going to replace email or SMS. We always say you're going to send less invites than you are SMS than you are email. And that is totally fine. Where the data kind of shines is the effectiveness of those limited sends and how it kind of performs within their stack.
Thanks.
Anthony, you're back up.
Yeah, okay, good. So going down this competitive advantage side, first market, you've been pretty clear on that. There's a lot of players in the space. If you're looking down the integrations and third-party automations, have you started to look at where you believe that you can put that trench in and start digging that? Because obviously, Zakiya was asking about the competitive moat. And what I'm trying to understand a little bit is like knowing that there are the HubSpots out of the world, like they could easily come in and say, we're going to go do this. Sure. What are you doing to combat against that?
So in addition to, the long-term data platform thinking, there are moats that we've got, right? I think I've got a list of 5 major moats. The first one being a technical moat, quite honestly, because calendars are hard. They are technology from the 80s that has not really been revolutionized or anything like that. The documentation's old. Everybody, all the Gen Zs are working on AI right now, so they're not thinking about calendar invites and how to program them. So there's a little bit of a technical moat there. There's also this technical moat in terms of calendar clients, right? So I'm a Google Calendar guy. You might be a Microsoft 365 guy. You might be an Apple calendar kind of girl, but each one of those has their own technical challenges that you have to overcome in terms of creating a beautiful calendar invite, right? Some of them parse HTML, some of them do not. Some of them will deal with your CSS, some of them will not. So, that is a painstaking process because there's no IDE for that, right? There's no developer environment that shows you like what your calendar invite's going to look like. So that's a painstaking process in of itself. And then, so there are technical moats that we're thinking about. And then there are...
Maybe to paint the picture a little bit there. So I had come up with this idea in 2019 when launching a Kickstarter. And when, and I can give a little bit more detail on that, but the point here is, once I knew that this was a relevant option for brands in the future, it still took me 4+ years to find the guy that could actually implement it. I had worked with dev agencies, contractors, and more. Nobody could really figure out how to get those invites in. Because really, when we send one invite, we're sending like a ton of different invites with the parameters that are set within each client, right? So, when it comes to the HubSpots, the Klaviyo's, the MailChimps of the world, like they innovate through acquisition, not through iteration. Now, if somebody comes along, a HubSpot or anyone else, and they decide to do a calendar feature, honestly, great. We're doing something well. And if there's going to be more competition, that's only helping, the Google search terms for calendar marketing to kind of get an uptick. So we welcome that, and we think that we have a strong enough hold where if people come over, then we're going to be able to blow their mind.
I want to drill into that just a little bit more. So MailChimp does have a add to calendar button, right, within their emails, but it's a terrible UX.
Yes.
It's a terrible experience. You'll get that email that says, click this button and you can add it to your calendar. But what it does is it downloads an ICS attachment to your device that you then have to go figure out, okay, how do I actually get this into my calendar client, right? And so it's a terrible experience. You have to be pretty tech savvy, quite honestly, to get that thing onto your calendar.
Agreed.
And so we've actually seen this sort of thing play out before, right? So MailChimp has had pop-ups, right? They've had pop-up email capture for a while now. But they just went out last year and acquired Amped, which is a local Raleigh company, because their pop-ups were way better, right? Their UX, their UI was way better than what MailChimp had. So they went out and they actually acquired them and have spent the last year trying to integrate Amped into the MailChimp suite of tools.
What's currently not working? Or, if you can't answer that,
I can.
What are you concerned about not working?
So, one thing that we're trying to figure out right now, like we've been having discussions all day about this, basically between us and with customers. We always include them in our decision-making process. But the thing that we're thinking about is pricing, because right now, like I said, we're a B2B SaaS subscription, and basically you get an allowance of invites, right? And while that may work for many brands, for other brands it may not, right? They may be subscribed to the $3,000 a month package, have 1 million contacts inside of InviteJet that they're gonna, send calendar invites to, but they may not do it every single month, okay? So for those kinds of users, the pricing for them, it may be something like a smaller platform fee, and then we charge usage, right? Instead of a subscription-based allocation. So it's kind of we're just kind of trying to figure out, what is the best in terms of pricing for our users to keep them from churning, to enable that third-party API, what makes the most sense in terms of pricing from a customer's perspective.
What feedback are you getting from them on that today?
So we emailed some. They said, we got to talk to our team and we'll get back to you. I suspect that they're not, basically we made them an offer they can't refuse, right? Basically the offer is low platform fee, we'll waive your fee for a couple months, and that way you're just paying usage, right? And so that's a really powerful way to get people from, lead to the sales pipeline to closed, right?
And this all, also stems from the educational aspect of things. So, there are moments and time-based events throughout the year that just make complete sense. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, but it's the use cases in between that we have to do a good job of giving them recommendations, playbooks, and
like
just
a shipping cutoff, right? That's something you probably weren't sitting there thinking of, but when we say it, it makes total sense. Like, oh, I could put a shipping cutoff date on somebody's calendar, and now they know they need to order this for it to arrive on Valentine's Day, which is always my problem.
How many customers do you currently have?
We're about 35, 36 right now.
One of the things, like if you had to look at this from where you are financially today, trying to get to scale.
Yep.
What challenges are you seeing there?
Okay, so what challenges in terms of scale, where we are financially today? So we are fundraising actively. We're in the final stages of diligence with a firm. And so for us, in terms of, use of funds and kind of what hurdles that helps us with, it's really like, most importantly, it's people, right? We need resources in terms of engineering, content marketer, who can also, double as a sales lead qualifier for us, just take some heat off of us so that we can focus on, some of the things that are really important to drive this business forward.
Their one-gen engineer is
he's pretty mid.
Kind of slack.
I hear he uses ChatGPT way too much.
I know where that connection goes.
Yeah, exactly. So
we just know there's so many opportunities, especially around the third-party API and opening it up to others. So obviously we've talked about our beachhead, but there's secondary and tertiary markets that just open up the floodgates for us. We've had conversations with MLB teams about preseason ticket sales, events in general. Think if there's a concert happening around you and you see on Spotify, like they're coming, like that could be a calendar invite for whenever that might be happening. Sports in general, like university teams, like, I'm not
Taylor Swift tickets.
My kids aren't in college yet, but we're in baseball, and I wish that every single calendar invite would just be on my calendar for every practice or game, but I have to go and do that manually. So being able to open up the doors for people to use it in ways that they wouldn't otherwise be able to, that's exciting for us as well.
How much calendar share do you have? I mean, there are 3. You mentioned 3. Are there 5 or are there 10? How much development you need to do? And it's a 7-part question. And do you do you anticipate?
Give a venture capitalist one question and they find a way to. I think he swiggled 8 into this one.
I feel so constrained. So how much calendar share do you have? And do you expect pushback from anybody like Google to say, hey, stop that?
I'll take the
calendar share. You mean like the number of
the number of calendars?
How many calendars do you need to develop to get to
right.
a lot?
The beautiful thing is that we can find the most stringent, the one with the most stringent policies in terms of parsing and making it look beautiful, right? And develop for that. And then we're pretty well covered on most other things. So, we've got a suite of calendars. It's about 8 to 10 calendars big that we'll actually go and do our testing on. And so with those 8 to 10 calendars, we're covered on 95% of the calendars out there. Yeah.
Great.
All right. So I want you to be honest about the question that I'm going to ask.
Okay.
And I'm asking it for a number of reasons, so be honest.
Sure.
On a scale of 1 to 10, and Paul, I want you to answer first. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all confident, 10 being like, look, we're Amazon. How confident are you in the success of your company?
I think right now, maybe a 2-part answer. So as far as the product and how people are using it and its effectiveness, I'm a 10 out of 10. We've seen between small, large brands use it successfully and it's efficient, blowing their minds and just having awesome conversations with them of like, why didn't we do this before? On the other side of it, we have to do really well at the educational side and giving people more reason to use it. It can't just be a one-off. We have to get really good at that. part of the reason that we are raising is to be able to get people to help us do that. Depending on how successful we are implementing that, right now I would say I'm like 8 out of 10 on that. There's just some unknowns and some use cases that we haven't even thought of. But every single day we're getting more use cases out of it from brands that we didn't even think of. Like early on, the unengaged audience aspect with it not going to promotional, the promo tab, we didn't think of that at first. And so being able to build around those feature requests, and we had a supplement brand send out 90,000 unengaged invites, and that did 17K in net revenue and re-engaged thousands of people back into their flows. So the more opportunities we have to have people test things out in different ways, I'm much more confident in being able to create those playbooks for people and give them more use cases around it.
Awesome. Brian?
So our job, there's risk. Our job is to eliminate that risk. And it takes, a delusional person to be a founder. So, I'm going to say 12 out of 10.
Oh, all right.
All right.
Whoa.
I know.
Final
Throwing
tally.
it down.
Holds his shot.
Yes.
We'll come back to this in 10 years and I'll be like,
yeah,
"You were
exactly.
right."
We'll see.
I will say Brian chugged a Celsius before he came in here, so he's feeling it right now.
But I'm surprised it's only a 12 then.
Oh, and Mitch, the last part of your question was around like Google and if they were to decide to do anything. So Gautam has been incredibly helpful. He's one of our advisors, ex-Gmail. Really, when it comes down to, so millions upon millions of calendar invites are sent every single second, basically. When it comes to Google, they have to go through a long process with their policies. It has to go through the SEC. There was just a change last year on some parameters around spam and unsubscribe, right? So usually their policy changes happen every 3 to 5 years. It has to go through a stringent process. And even if that were to happen, even Gautam says that they're probably not going to make a change where that would just declassify us the ability to send. But really, at the end of the day, one of the big ways for us to see that we are successful is if Gmail or someone were to say, hey, now you have to actually put in your terms and conditions and calendar invites, or there be an unsubscribe screen that actually includes calendar invites, which would be probably the only next step that they would do, which maybe would cause a little bit of friction, but that's how the world works today with email and SMS as well.
Got it. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, fellas. Great job.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time,
Great.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Great job.
All right. In this round, we have InviteJet versus CivicReach. So we've got Chip Kennedy here. He was at a customer site earlier and raced from Virginia. I imagine it like a moonshine run where you had like Virginia police behind you and you were going 800 miles an hour on 95. Is that what happened?
Multiple tornado warnings that came through the radio on the drive to be here.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Reminder, they already pitched in the round of 8, so you can go back and check out that episode. For now, since many of you have already heard that pitch, we're going to get right to the selection committee members' questions.
Chip, thank you so much for what you're building and for sharing it with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So my question for you, convince me that this is a pain pill problem and not a vitamin problem. Right now, the way that I'm seeing your problem, it's very much, it seems to be a bit of a vitamin as opposed to a pain pill. What I mean by that, I'm sure you understand.
Of course.
Pain pill, you'll wake up in the middle of the night to solve the problem. Vitamin, I'll take it when I remember. Help convince me of that, please.
Absolutely. Could I put you in the shoes of one of our customers?
Please.
You get 20,000 calls a year to your city of 50,000 residents. Way more calls than you'd expect for such a small city. 20 to 30% of those are about power outages or questions for the utility department. This has been such a long problem for such a long time that you asked your utility department to set up an answering service. This is a staffing service, people who work the phones. They don't do a great job of customer service, but they're handling all of that overflow that your city can't. And now you ask the third-party utility provider to pay for it, but you also get stuck with that bill. So you are paying a provider much more than the cost of CivicReach platform by the multiples to run and staff this call center that does not do a good job of treating your residents well and doesn't always solve their problems. When our instance have come into place, We immediately solve that problem. You do not need to keep that contract with that third-party call center. The utility is no longer in charge of the customer experience. You just save $50,000 to $100,000 in that department, and we've rolled out to 10 other departments across your city at the same time. So we're seeing a true ROI of cost and pain for the staff across the city that can't pick up these phone calls at the volume that's being asked of them.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully that answered your question.
It did, thank you.
So you said you're doing pilots. How does that work, and what are the milestones you hope to achieve through the pilot? And what's the ARR for a median customer?
Great question. Our ARR, AOV right now is targeted at 15K, but we've already seen that go up in some of our customer conversations. They're just willing to pay more and see a lot more value in the solution because we're seeing the areas that we're solving of truly painkillers. With that starting point, we are projecting or we're contracting pilots to be a year, and we're having customers sign follow-on contract agreements so they'll understand how much they'll be paying for year 2 and 3. So even if we discount the pilots a lot, which we do, they know how much our true cost is. To help incentivize them, we'll often grandfather them into certain price points so that we'll lock in maybe that year 2 or 3 price for life. The milestones within the pilots is a little bit technology, but is often adoption, where we're seeing the place where we have to push the hardest. The technology exists today, and we've done a great job of building the product, and we're going to continue to execute our product roadmap. But what we do with our early pilot partners is get their residents and staff ready for this change in modality of how residents talk to them. AI is new to a lot of folks, especially the folks we're helping and the communities we're serving. So the milestones we set are internal testing with an IT department, internal testing with the whole city, a deployment publicly, and then different rounds of marketing to residents and getting more and more of them to use the new number we've created. And those milestones all reflect number of calls that we're handling and how successfully our AI is handling that staff no longer has to handle.
And it's a cost justification. I mean, they're buying because they can save money.
So by and large, every customer has 2 considerations, and they almost universally use both. 1 is cost, and 2 is experience. We are lowering the cost of picking up the phone. And for some cities, it's that third-party call center. Other cities, they are quite literally, due to federal funding freezes right now, firing staff, which are disproportionately CSRs and folks who pick up the phone now, administrative assistants. Everyone who was doing customer service, they just aren't considered as vital jobs in government. So it's replacing those staffs with a cheaper solution that they were already losing, cost justification. The customer experience is really big for most of our customers. Government wants to serve their people well, and this is one way that they can do a much better job than they're doing now.
I kind of like going to the DMV and the lady getting a little attitude with me. Like, I've gotten used to that at this point.
You like the DMV?
I mean,
that's what we heard here.
You're
the one person they did the survey. You're the person.
You walk up, they give you an attitude, you get an attitude. It's a part of the experience at this point.
That is life. The DMV is
like a Seinfeld episode. Yeah.
It's a good point.
So I want to follow on a little bit to that, Chip, but just my question. We understand the cost benefit analysis of this for governments. Governments are notoriously slow to change. Yeah. You said why now in your slide, but governments don't usually go by what you believe is why now. How are you convincing them outside of the cost justification of really why now? And it's not always resource, right, that they're concerned about. So like really looking at it at the markets, why are they looking at changing this kind of stuff now?
It's a very good question. I'll pull up a slide from my appendix because we get this question a lot. And we talk to our customers about this a lot. This is a frontier technology. Voice AI is, those of us in this room who are investing in tech see it a lot, but most folks don't know how big this is and how big this technology is becoming. Governments especially are not far on the innovation curve. However, there's something different happening with what we're selling and specifically how this technology is helping. So when we go just to our target customer, just to cities and counties, the folks who are controlling these budget decisions that we work with, these are the surveys of them. Over 1,500 city and government agencies are in something called the GovAI Coalition, where they co-write regulation on how to work with AI vendors. It was started by government for government because they want to learn how to procure AI. We sit in this coalition as well as an approved vendor. 71% of US government leaders believe and continue to believe that AI benefits will outweigh the risks for government use cases. And we talk to cities, mayors, elected officials, city managers on all surveys are cautious, but all bullish on leading AI procurement. The numbers back this up. If you look at AI pilots beyond what we're doing in voice, you're seeing resident-facing and in general AI pilots that are succeeded in government and vendors who are selling AI very successfully to government. We're rapidly moving past the pilots and into the problem-solving stage. And the biggest lesson we've learned and the biggest way that we're converting contracts, and I'll say doing so pretty successfully right now, is that we leave the AI on the side. And we talk about the problem and the cost of picking up the phone, and we offer a solution at a price point they've never heard of before, and that sells it.
Okay, good.
So, two-part question.
Please.
I'm taking a page out of your
I
book,
like it.
Mitch.
I like
Two-part question, and they have nothing to do with each other.
Okay.
So, first of all, who are you selling into? Like, who says yes within the organization, within the government?
Great question. So we have a crystal clear market in ICP. We say city and county governments. What that means specifically, because it's voice AI and it's new, we're talking to a chief information officer, chief technology officer. The title varies, but there's a unified head of technology in almost every government. They're going to be the ones who's our main champion, who's making the purchase decision, who brings us into government. Governments are complicated. Like education, you need about 7 or 8 individuals at least to sell. So we also work with a city manager, elected officials to just bolster support for us and get us excited and make sure that they can get us in front of residents. And then we work with directors of departments that are deploying the services. Parks and Rec, Public Works, everyone who picks up these phone calls and truly feels that pain, we're solving their problems. So we need to make sure they're in the room. They won't be making these purchase decisions. They're not generally going to procure AI, but they're going to feel the benefits of this and report back to us and to their city that we succeeded.
Okay, perfect. And then part two.
Please.
Also a separate question.
That's okay.
With the proliferation of AI,
Yeah.
talk about my favorite question, sustainable competitive advantage, AKA moat. Talk about what that is in this space for you.
Happy to. This slide's a bit more technical, but I'll speak at a higher level.
Okay.
As an AI company, we fit in the application layer. Anthony and I have talked a lot about this over the years. We are not a wrapper around a large language model, but we borrow from large language models, and we are not building our own. We sit on top of what state-of-the-art large language models are doing of creating conversational AI. That is not our IP and not our moat. The layers above that are the context and data layer that powers an AI to be context-aware for the use case it sits in this case, government customer experience. The agentic layer at the top is the voice, the integrations, all the part that makes it useful to that caller's experience. Our IP is in those top 2 layers. So when we go to a city, unlike other AI companies, we won't own their data. This is public records data. This is resident data. Our contracts specifically say that it's not ours to take, but it is ours to use to build the system. So we build pipelines and data layers for the cities, so for the first time ever, they have the ability to interact with a data layer of all of the information that they've collected across their websites, press releases, everything we ingest, accessible to an AI agent. Our IP is also the agent that sits on top of that. We own the agent. It's our custom proprietary speech-to-text, text-to-speech. We borrow a lot of technology and we build a lot of technology at this layer to not just make it effective as voice AI, but then integrated with all the systems of government, the CRMs that departments use, the payment systems that residents need to interact with. Also, we can abstract away from these internet tools, and as residents, we don't have to use them anymore. So when we sell to governments, that's our IP. We're reliant on other technology systems, of course, but our moat is the fact that we'll integrate with more government-specific systems than any other competitor, and we build a data layer so that any other competitor comes into a government and they're not going to want to get rid of the infrastructure we've created for them. And in fact, we've already seen governments ask us to have other vendors use our data layer, which just gives us the opportunity for B2B income.
So Chip, let me follow on that a little bit. There are a lot of incumbents in the government space, right? That's what you're alluding to. Tyler Technologies, et cetera. There's massive, massive companies that are in there. So to take it a layer further, right? So you have this abstraction layer that you're layering in on top of these types of systems. What happens if they decide that they don't want you to have access to that data?
That is a great question. And we can dive more into how we look at competition in generally. But to answer your question specifically first, it is a big risk of our business, one that we de-risk with our go-to-market strategy. So you're absolutely right. We had a call with a customer today using a tool called See-Click-Fix. We have it here in Raleigh. It's this idea you can say there's a pothole and there's a whole system and CRM in place to make that government a bit more responsive in fixing the pothole. The government asked us, can you integrate? We absolutely can and we will. That incumbent, Civic Plus, they have equal incentives to either acquire us at some point or stop us from using their technology and build it themselves. What we've seen in the trend in government with Tyler Tech, as you mentioned, Civic Plus, the other players that touch resident engagement at all levels of government, they don't innovate the way we do. They are not building AI-first systems, and the ones they've tried are falling flat. It's just not working, and their entire strategies have leaned in the last few decades towards acquisition, not towards trying to build these technologies, as proved by multiple GovTech startups in the Triangle that have been acquired by Civic Plus, including some of them who are on our team now. There are other competitors we're worried about that move faster, including the other GovTech startups that are focused and have launched voice products, but they're all stuck to the products they've built. CityBot's a chatbot company that's trying to layer on voice and hasn't done so successfully from a product standpoint like we have. Polymorphic is a local government CRM that has added voice, and we've similarly gotten feedback that they're not focused on the voice problem the way we are, and the results are showing in the product.
I'm going to add the next AI question on this, since kind of that's where I've been for a while. This voice AI market is moving extremely fast right now. So how do you continue to advance what you're doing to keep up with some of the others, right, and the other techs that's out there? Because there's some up there that I see that I know are advancing very, very fast.
Absolutely. We're raising now for a reason. We closed a friends and family round in January and used that to hire a full-time, extraordinarily senior team that I'm incredibly excited to work with. To get to that next level and to keep up with the competition and to keep being a first mover in local government voice AI, which is a much bigger market than you might think. That's why we're looking at bolstering our resources and giving ourselves this runway to run concurrent pilots, run a conference strategy, which at our size is relatively expensive, but in the long run pays itself back in dividends, and run our broker program, which we've already stood up, where we have brokers across the country acting as fairly inexpensive BDRs on our behalf and making introductions inbound. But that operation will cost money, and so we're going to be a bit of a bigger company with this raise.
Let you get 4-part questions. You've been very patient.
I'm curious. I'm curious about your income statement. Agentic AI companies that have the LLM underneath that they have to pay for changes the COGS from a traditional 80% SaaS. What is your gross margin going to look like? And how are you thinking about that?
It's a great question. It's one of the issues that we've faced and have a hard time modeling out, but we've done a pretty good job. Our COGS are all by the minute when you look at voice AI, and then you can abstract that out to the tokens that we put into any large language model. The contracts that we run are ARR, multi-year contracts, which is the gold standard in government and works for us as a vendor, but those are two different pricings. So the way we do it is we set a upper threshold for our production systems of cost per minute, modeled after how many phone calls will come into that city. And what we found is with our customers, it's fairly predictable. They know how many people are calling departments across the year, and there are volume spikes, but across the year, we know how many phone calls we'll need to take. We can also build the technology so that a certain amount of minutes, if it's clear that no one's answering, we can kick that call away from the AI and move it to a different department, hand it off to a human. So with that, even though those are two different models, we can predict across the year, see how much that contract will cost us by the cost per minute, and use that to make sure that we're taking at least, when we get to that 50K, at least 50%. But that's going to be something that we test over time, especially in our pilots. So our early cost in COGS is about 25 cents to 50 cents per phone call, which is on the expensive end. Our goal is to get that down to 10 cents to 15 cents per minute per phone call.
And what's the corresponding revenue?
The revenue per phone call?
Per phone call? I'm going to do gross margin real quick after you give me that answer.
No, I appreciate it. I can give you our best guess based on the use cases we've seen, but those have been all over the place with ROI and specific phone call. But in terms of staff time to pick up the phone, we estimate it to be around $5 a minute, staff, phone systems, all in cost.
And you're charging how much?
Our pilots start at $15K per year.
Can you do it by phone call? You just told me your cost per phone call. What's your revenue per phone call?
Can I do the revenue per phone call?
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's $4.50 per phone call.
Okay, great. And how many phone calls as a percentage of all the phone calls a city gets can you answer, do you think, in the end?
Great question.
And how many are you doing now, and where do you think it goes?
So for our first customer and our early customer contracts, we're set up to handle 100% of the phone calls that come in. And the KPI we measure is that we can successfully route or answer questions for 75%, meaning the AI's success rate 75%. That other 25% is it gave up, failed, the AI didn't know enough context, et cetera, but we're still bailing out and introducing and referring that caller to someone else, a human. But for our cities and customers, they're asking us to answer every call. And then what we're able to do is set a threshold for how many we'll do successfully. Quote from a customer this morning is, if we can do 5 to 10%, we'd change the needle in the cost structure of how they pick up the phone.
So, Chip, who are you and why are you the one that would solve this problem?
I appreciate that question. CivicReach is a passion project, turned into a research project, turned into a venture-backed company that I'm incredibly excited to run. The origins of it go a lot earlier. I grew up in a family that ran a nonprofit in Boston where we would serve folks living on the margins, and we would throw these experiences for families living in homeless shelters. So I learned at a young age, for a family that's looking where they're going to eat tonight or where they're going to sleep that night, a phone call with local government was quite literally that lifeline. And from that starting point, I've had all these life experiences. I lived in New York, has a very robust 311 system, which we're in that world right now. I used it to get out of a lawsuit from my landlord. I had an advocate on the other end of the line that was a person who just picked up the phone and knew a little bit about city code regulations in New York. Similarly, for folks, whether their problem's big, small, a millionaire paying taxes, or someone looking for a homeless shelter, a phone call is often the difference maker when it comes to a government serving a resident. And so the idea that I was able to find a problem worth solving that is specifically in that space just fit me and my values so well, and I'm incredibly lucky that I now get to build a company solving that at scale.
Cool. We're going to do last questions. So Zakia, since you started, we'll go this direction again.
Okay.
Last question.
Okay, I'm going to ask you my infamous...
And no more than 2 parts on your last question.
I have a 72-part...
And you can't add on to someone. You guys
no, it's one. It's genuinely one question, my infamous last question on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being, I'm not so sure. 10 being, this is it. It's a success. It's Amazon. I always say Amazon. Where do you think you stand on the success of your company in the next, call it 5 years?
Next 5 years? 10. This is the best job I've ever had. And it suits me well, but the problem is a problem worth solving. And too many innovators don't touch local government, let alone touch the areas of local government of service delivery. They don't think there's money in it. Hopefully I've proved to you there is, but beyond that, it's just a problem worth solving. And so we're excited to do it and excited to scale it.
I'll go a little lighter on the last question here. Why should CivicReach move forward?
In this competition?
Yes.
I'm a fan of the diversity of startups we have in the Triangle, including marketing SaaS. And I like the company that presented before me. But I think we have enough marketing SaaS. I think we have enough tools that help folks get Kohl's deals out there. I don't think we have enough tools that helps public servants serve government. I don't think we have enough tools that really focus on a social impact that is meaningful to how our democracy works. And I truly believe that that's our solution.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chip.
We appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Great
Appreciate
job.
the questions.
Thanks.
All right, Selection Company. Tough choice. We're down between InviteJet and CivicReach. Zakia, what are some of the things you thought of those 2 pitches?
First of all, 2 really awesome companies. I love what they're building. I'm excited about them both. I think for InviteJet, they have really solid traction, right? Which I appreciate. They seem to have some really strong advisors, which will help them to continue to grow. And their moat, I think it's pretty good, right? I wasn't sure at first, but I like their technical moat and some of the things they're doing there. With CivicReach, I think Chip is an incredibly good founder. I think he's very solid, very exceptional. I was very moved by his story, his why. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that because I think that it's difficult building a company. And I think when you have a really strong why, it helps you to get through the ups and the downs and some of the difficulties that you have to deal with as you're building. So I think it's really important to know why. So yeah, that's kind of my first reaction for both of the companies.
Mitch, what are some of your? We talked about this in your selection committee. You've probably done. You've lapped all of us probably by 10x on the number of pitches you've received. I say that as you're very wise. Extremely wise.
Well, and and they were both great. That's the
having been here
this.
nearly like half as long as you have. The quality of pitches is just like over time is like we had 20-ish companies apply to this, and the quality of that cohort was 10 years ago. We've been like, these are like napkins and like kind of wacky. 10 years ago, everyone's like, I'm going to take down Facebook, kind of thing.
There was no resource back then. There's so much more now.
We don't get a lot of that. So
these are really they're both really good ideas. I think that, and I'm trying to set aside the fact that InviteJet's a little farther along.
Sure.
And maybe that's more appealing because it's farther along. I'm not sure about that. They're very different. Quite frankly, I'm not a big fan of the government market. But after I heard him talk, I thought, it is a market in which they want to do things, and the federal, not just the federal level, but I thought it was interesting that he chose that market and his why. I agree with you. I think you have a very passionate founder. It is a big market. It's probably a little busier than the other market, but I was impressed by both of them.
Awesome. Anthony, any feedback for this?
So same thing. I was trying to take with a grain of salt a little bit of how further along one was versus the other, and knowing both companies kind of coming in a little bit. It was interesting to me just because when I was looking at InviteJet, I was a little skeptical at first, the same thing of like, is this calendar thing a real thing? And it does seem like it's a real thing. I also know the government space really well. And I know how difficult it is to crack the government space. And as much as you can be passionate about it and want to do it, it takes a very long time and a ton of money to go do it.
But once you get the customers, they never churn.
But you took
governments
it in,
don't go out of business.
It is hard for a startup company to crack that market.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked the incumbent question, because there are so many incumbents that are in there and have been for 25, 30 years. And so like that, I'm trying not to lean just on past experience, but I have the scars from that market. And I used to sell financial systems to government markets. Oh, by the way, exactly who he's trying to sell to, because it is a financial purchase at the end of the day, even though the CIO is involved. So I'm trying to take that with a grain of salt because the technology idea is super cool. Mm-hmm. But I do believe InviteJet seems like they have much more of a moat because the space from my just general perspective is the AI space is moving so fast.
Yeah.
It's hard to build a moat right now around it.
But I think if there is a founder to do it,
it's him.
It's Chip.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then all three of you kind of referenced, the one's further ahead, but, again, as investors, we got to look out 10 to 12 years. So, where they are today may be irrelevant in 10 or 12 years. This is the hard part about investing is we've got these little pieces of information and we're trying to predict 10 years into the future. Yeah. So,
I mean, I look at those two markets, I can tell you that most government size companies, having been there, become $20 to $25 million companies with potential exit opportunity, where InviteJet just seems to have a much bigger upside, right? From an investment 10, 12 years from now, if they were continue to go, there's just more market to get because it takes so long to get the government market. But it also, I appreciated just going down where the gross profits, because margins were, my mind was going there too at 15K. How many customers does it take? Like, what is that? That fight is a big fight.
Yeah.
So when I look at just kind of the overarching of market size, where they could be in a short period of time,
yep,
InviteJet has a slight edge of where they could be faster.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to play angel's advocate because I don't advocate for the devil. I'm going to play angel's advocate here. I just want to say, I think that for these early stage companies, it's so much about the founder and the team. I think they both have great founders and great teams. So let me put that out there. I just think that, particularly for early stage companies, a great founder will figure it out. Yeah. So even if the presentation 5 years from now were to be completely different.
Agreed.
Right? In the problems that they're solving or the way that they're solving the problem, they may even pick up an additional audience, right? But I just think that's why it's so important at these early stages to really look at the founder and the team.
So we've got to make a decision. We're going to do it by last name. Zakia, you're an L. So where are you going to land on this one?
All right. I'm going to land on love both of the companies. Let me just say that. But I think I'm going to cast my vote for InviteJet.
I'm going to vote for InviteJet just because I think the go-to-market, their opportunity for one-to-many go to market through the agencies, and there's probably others. There's probably a lot of things they haven't yet discovered, but what they're doing is already monetizing pretty well. And I agree with you. I just think that it's the other one's a great entrepreneur, a great technology. It's something's going to happen. It's going to be a lot of money in a long time.
Gotcha.
Two great founders, founder and founder team. One is a repeat founder team, which is something I also kind of take into account. Like they've seen it, they've done it, they've been there. And at the end of the day, when I looked at both of them, trying to keep it all things equal, I'm leaning towards InviteJet.
All right, so a unanimous decision. Wow, we don't get a lot of this, but well, thanks for your time, guys. This is really appreciate it. This was filmed during tornado watches and warnings and trains and sirens and thunder and rain. So the universe tried to make this not happen,
made it.
And we powered through. And we appreciate you guys doing this.
Thanks for doing
this, Scott.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. It's great for the community.
And just like that, another company moves one step closer to a $25,000 investment from the Triangle Tweener Fund. The competition is heating up. Who will rise? Who will fall? Who will claim the ultimate prize? This episode was edited and produced by Walk West. Want to follow more of the action? Visit tweenermadness.com and follow us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more.